So, welcome to part two in our AI series. We are going to be talking about training your AI today. And we're going to be personalizing and going through the aspects of personalizing ChatGPT to challenge biases, build reflection, and support strategic thinking. While we're using ChatGPT as the model today, a lot of the functions that ChatGPT has is found in other generative AI as well. So this can be used as a model of just understanding the different parts of AI that we can adjust in setup and in features. So just to recap the series, session one, which was last month, this is accessible on YouTube. If you need to find the link, you can go to our YouTube page or just reach out to me. I'm happy to send you directly the link. But this one was really exploring an understanding of how generative AI works, how AI thinks, how people think, and how those interact with one another, and how they can feed off of each other in a positive way, but also understanding the negatives that can come from AI. It was a lot about awareness and understanding of what is the makeup of these AI tools. Today's session is much more about setting up for success. So this is really going to be exploring what are these different settings and features that we can use to help set up AI as a thinking partner, not a replacement. So this is the beginnings of taking our understanding from session one. And now, with that understanding, how do we prevent some of the negative aspects? How can we limit or mitigate those through the built-in settings and features? There's still more awareness that we're going to be building. We won't be fully diving into application yet. That's going to be session three, which will be in 2026 on January 22nd. And what we're going to be doing is taking our learning from session one and session two and begin to actually apply this in different executive function domains to really see how all of this learning can be applied to set us up for success. So we'll be looking at some real world executive function challenges. So keep that in mind for that third session coming up, and I'll be sending out reminders and the registration links again for that. So just starting off, awareness alone doesn't prevent misuse. Without this intentional and ongoing setup, those risks can still show up, and we might not notice them when they show up. They can be lingering, they can be under the currents. And that's where today is about understanding different ways that we can prevent those risks. It might not fully remove them. One of the key points from the first part of this series was that using some of our metacognition and self-monitoring, we need to iterate in using AI, always staying on guard of, is this serving me? Is this helping me? Is this moving me forward, or are there some risks here? So today is really about that prevention, not causing panic about these settings. So just a quick recap. The pitfalls that we're trying to mitigate through understanding these different settings and features that we reviewed in session one included things like over-agreeableness, just always reaffirming what we put into AI or into ChatGPT, bias reinforcement, loss of our own metacognition because we're not thinking about our own thinking. We're kind of outsourcing it just to AI to do for us. And so we lose that muscle, that reflexing. Over reliance and false productivity, feeling like we're doing a lot, but we're not really making progress. And a narrative lock in. And the narrative lock in is kind of a self fulfilling prophecy where it keeps going down. Something that's not serving us, but it can feel like an echo chamber that you get stuck into. And if you see me turn it over, I forgot to make this announcement. I'm always just checking out to see if any questions come in. So, the core idea of today's session is that AI behavior is shaped across different layers, and they're not always very apparent what these layers are. So, AI doesn't behave in just one way. It behaves based on how it's set up, framed, and responded to. It's very iterative of how it learns, how it adapts, and how it determines the best responses to give back. So today we will be exploring these different layers and how to manage them. And I'll actually be pulling up ChatGPT and showing them and showing some of these things in action. So what are these four layers? So the main domains where AI behavior is shaped currently. You watch this 6 months from now, who knows? It could be totally different. But right now, the landscape is there are global instructions, which are defaults and guardrails through all chats that you may have. There is role-based design, and you might sometimes hear this about prompt design, prompt engineering, how we're setting up a role for AI to fill in when we ask it to do things or spit out information back to us. Memory and persistence, where this is almost another type of global instructions, but it's a very particular type. What carries forward into future chats that you may open up, and in-chat feedback loops. So this is where there's moment-to-moment learning within an existing chat that does not necessarily apply to other chats that you may open. So layer one are these global instructions. So these global instructions shape AI's default behavior. If you plug in no global instructions, it is going to just be the base ChatGPT's design default behavior. But you can actually adjust those default behaviors to tailor to what's going to benefit you most. So this layer is influencing the tone of responses, willingness to challenge you, depth of reflection, speed versus thoughtfulness, agreement versus questioning. This is just what are the base underlying assumptions that we want AI and ChatGPT in particular here to take when engaging back with the chats that you are creating. This is across all of your different chats, all new chats that you may use or create. There are some risks when we don't use global instructions. Some of those pitfalls that we shared in the first session, really about over agreeableness, shallow reflection, bias reinforcement, fast answers that feel helpful but skip thinking. And this is because the default behavior, AI or ChatGPT is optimized to be polite, fast, and agreeable. That's its base settings. So it is not reflective by default. It is not challenging by default. It is not going out of its way to mitigate what might be blind spots for each user because each user is different. So the base settings that you find are going to be polite, fast, and agreeable. But if you're someone like me who might believe that I'm always right, I actually seek out being challenged. So these base settings do not work for me. They don't challenge my biases. So how does this change our AI's behavior? Without instructions, you're going to get pretty immediate answers. There's going to be minimal pushback, and it's mirroring your framing. It's taking everything that you put in as fact and just adjusting to what you bring to the table. But with instructions, it's adapting based off of whatever you input in there. And so you can pre-program it to do things like ask clarifying questions, slow down any complex thinking to make sure that we don't rush to decisions or outcomes. You can inform it to challenge assumptions. You can inform it to flag blind spots. You can inform it to provide alternate perspectives. Challenging assumptions is a great thing, but another one that I just throw in is don't make assumptions. Don't just fill in gaps. I've sometimes used certain ChatGPT features to help flesh out our coaching bios. And before putting in some strict global instructions, it would just make things up. It would just make assumptions. And so one of my learning lessons was to make sure, hey, don't fill in gaps unnecessarily. If you need more information, ask additional questions first. But otherwise, it just spit out totally inaccurate information. Thought it was helpful, thought it was giving a response quick, but it was just wrong. The impacts from using this is that it applies across all conversations, all new conversations. It sets these defaults, doesn't necessarily impact all of the outcomes, but how it develops outcomes, how it develops responses, gets default behaviors. And this should evolve over time. And I will share one of my examples on this. So the instructions aren't necessarily controlling AI, but they are setting expectations and starting to set up predetermined styles and approaches, base styles and approaches that it takes. So let's look at just some of the things that you may want to include depending on your goals, depending on your brain, depending on how you use it. You will want to consider, how do you want AI to originally respond to you? Do you want it to challenge you or lead to confirmation? How should reflection be handled? How assumptions should be treated? How uncertainty should be surfaced? And so some examples that can be used is ask clarifying questions before answering, challenge assumptions when appropriate, slow down complex decisions, surface alternate perspectives. So setting up great global instructions is best when iterative. So think about like our RISE problem solving model. When you're engaging with AI, you might recognize a problem. And so we can identify a couple of different ways. How do we mitigate that? And then think about a strategy of how do we apply it and see if those adjustments, we want to then evaluate if those adjustments are leading to better responses, leading to better outcomes. And we also want to make sure these are individually tailored with metacognition. I will say I go on Reddit a lot. And so I see a lot of recommendations on some global instructions to include. I'll try it out. Does this work for my brain? Does this work with how I engage with ChatGPT? And then sometimes like, no, this isn't really helping me out. Let me try a different one. And so there is definitely an iterative process here, figuring out what works best. So let's see some of these. So first, I'll just go through this slide, and then I'm going to pull up ChatGPT and actually show some of this in action. So where do you find global instructions? They are, if you click on your name, your username, it's in the bottom left corner. And what you will see is this menu pop up. And you can either click right onto personalization, or you can go to settings and you'll find where personalization also lives. This is what it looks like when you pull it up. And I'm going to pull it up on my screen and actually show this. But you can see I have custom instructions in here. Do not always agree with what I say. Try to contradict me as much as possible. I know I just shared before about the iterative process. This is starting to get a little too annoying. It's a little black and white. It's always disagreeing, even when it's something that's non-debatable. But it was a great first start from the base settings that I used. So we're going to look at a prompt if I'm trying to decide whether to take on a new project at work. I'm excited about it, but I'm already feeling stretched thin. What should I do? And then we're going to try out some of these instructions. So let's pull this over. Okay. So When you're on here, you come down to the name. As I said, you can go to settings or you can click right on personalization. I will just come over to settings. When you come to personalization, this is base custom instructions. You also can do base style and tone. I leave the default, but they do have some other prepackaged ones that you can use here. And we'll get down to some more of these down here. But let's remove these custom instructions so we can see what it looks like when it's not there. I'm going to start a new chat. And I'm going to say, to remind myself, deciding what a new project at work. Okay. So deciding about taking on a new project at work. I'm excited about it, but I'm already feeling spread thin. Please tell me what to do. And it's going to come out with a response. It's going to be more generic and it's going to jump right into solution mode. And so it's starting to come in, telling us things to do. And so it's less about what it's exactly saying here, but what we want to do is now let's compare this. And let's add in custom instructions of ask clarifying questions before you jump to any solutions conclusions. Fix this quick here. Save. So now we're going to take the same exact response into a new chat. And now immediately it's adjusted. Before I tell you what to do, I need to understand a few things because the right decision here depends much more on context than motivation alone. Now, I'm not necessarily saying this is a better response, but what I'm doing is just trying to show how a simple global instruction can completely alter the responses that it gives. And the type of global instructions that you would give it are going to be more tailored to what would the best partner do? How do I set up a partner to support me here? So I do see a question. If you change your settings on this, does it affect ChatGPT's memory of prior chats before you made the change? Will it still remember prior chat content? I believe so. And I'm actually not sure if it will impact. We'll talk about in-chat memory. So if you go to an old chat, I'm not sure if the global instructions are going to alter that one. But what I would say is anytime, if you want to carry over memory, I'm jumping ahead a little bit about in-chat memory, but if you wanted to adjust the global instructions and then continue on with those new global instructions with an existing chat, sometimes what you can do is ask it to, can you package everything from this chat so that I can copy it over into a new chat and not start from scratch. So you can prompt it to carry things over, but from what I've seen on a lot in my experience, at least, and we'll talk a little bit about GPTs today, when you make adjustments, they don't carry over as readily into existing chats. That's why you saw myself starting a new chat. So when in doubt, if you want them to apply, start a new chat because it's like it's starting from scratch there. Okay. Now this is great having all of these questions. It helps slow down this decision making. This would be great for people that rush to conclusions, rush to outcomes, and especially for people that may use leading questions. What I mean by a leading question is like your bias coming in. So it's a great way to slow down and ask deeper questions. While it might be ChatGPT asking those questions, It's helping you ask the questions to yourself to slow down your decision making. Please keep the questions coming. Thank you. I appreciate them. So, and we'll go through this with each of them, but what's a component of self-monitoring here? When should we be revisiting or adjusting the global instructions? So signs that the global instructions may need updating. If AI agrees with you too easily, an echo chamber, we might need to go in and adjust a little bit there. If responses feel supportive, but they're not challenging us, then it's just becoming a cheerleader. And even though that may feel good, that's not always pushing ourselves. That can be a little bit of relinquishing responsibility. If the advice sounds polished but shallow, we might want to revisit global instructions. If AI is just mirroring your emotional framing without any questioning of it, if you stop feeling slowed down on complex decisions, and if you notice that you're copying answers instead of thinking, or your goals or contexts have changed, but the responses haven't. The base, simple way I can say here is you're self monitoring whether this is actually helping you or not. And so, with almost all of these, it's about pausing and saying, well, how have the responses been? Is this actually leading to better outcomes? Am I growing? Am I learning? Or is this becoming more of a crutch? And in that case, you might want to revisit global instructions to adjust those. So, a key takeaway here is that global instructions are not set it and forget. They should evolve as your goals, context, and thinking evolve. And always ask yourself, is this tool helping me advance towards my goals? The other piece that I will point out, they are constantly updating these AI tools. And so those custom instructions I had previously about don't always agree, challenge me whenever possible. It was really working really well. It wasn't super black and white. I found it really advancing myself. But they roll out updates, and the same global instructions might then be applied differently as these models update. I had a great example of where I was using ChatGPT to help me with cooking Thanksgiving dinner. And I told it that the turkey only cooked for 2 hours and 45 minutes, but it was already at like 200 degrees. It was overcooked. And when I sent it back to ChatGPT, it was like, that's not possible. You're lying. I'm like, this is too much challenge. I literally just checked it. So it wouldn't have done that previously, but with the rollout of a new model, it was starting to, the global instructions weren't working any longer. Okay, so now layer two, this is an in-chat feature, but it's a very specific one, and this is about role-based design. And so role-based design is really about defining what job AI is doing. So this layer is influencing the type of thinking that AI is providing, the depth and versus the breadth of responses it will give you, the structure of the guidance, and the cognitive load that it's taking on. So this is not risks without global instructions. This is risks without role-based design, but it can lead to some cognitive drift. It leads to mixed objectives, a one-size-fits-all advice, and overwhelming responses. The basic thing here is when you ask it to do something without a role definition, it tries to give you the most generic, universal answer. But that doesn't always work with what we're actually asking it to do. So if AI doesn't know its job, it's trying to do everything. And so if you ask it about what's the best way to organize my week, it's going to try to both be like a productivity coach as well as super supportive cheerleader. It's going to just try and juggle too many hats. And then it's going to water down the types of responses that it gives you because it's trying to appease you. So how does role-based design change this AI behavior? Without role definition, you get blended advice. conflicting priorities, and a very generic structure. But with role definition, you get more focused thinking, clear boundaries of what it's trying to do, and better alignment to the specific task or function that we are engaging with it around. The impacts are roles can be separated by chats or GPTs, which we will talk about a little bit later. The role matters more than the tool, though. And the key thing here is you can create these kind of archetypes. And so these roles are means to provide general archetypes for AI to follow in very specific situations. So things that we want to include here is what to define explicitly. Maybe it's like the thinking job. We want you to be an expert planner. We want you to challenge my assumptions. We want you to be a reflector, a strategist. A big one you'll see out there is you are one of the top project managers in the entire country, and here is a project that we need to roll out. Help us create a project plan. This also helps it with what we don't want AI doing within this role and how directed versus exploratory it should be. So some examples is act as a critical planner and help navigate this problem. Your job is to challenge assumptions, focus on reflection, not solutions, play the role of a hiring manager. So think of roles as prepackaged set of instructions. So it isn't as effective as defining everything yourself, but it is efficient. So you can go through and label every little thing that you wanted to do, but you could also think about, hey, I want you to pretend that you are a hiring manager at a marketing firm that works with small companies to help them launch social media campaigns. They're very specific and niche. But what you're doing is packaging a lot of the types of questions that it may ask. And so rather than going through and literally defining the types of questions for an interview example would include this, you're helping it zone in with a lot of prepackaged information. Okay, all right. Thought I saw another question. So let's look at some role design in action. So when you're looking at role design, you can really find this in any new chat. It's when you're setting up GPTs, which I will share a little bit later. So a base prompt. So let's just take out the personalization setting. And what we're going to ask this one to do is help me prepare for a job interview. And so we are just ask it very simply, help me prepare for a job interview. So it just starts giving out, be ready to answer, tell me about yourself. Very generic. It's just going into very generic advice, which might not be that helpful. I'm not saying there's nothing to gain from here, but it just jumped right in, ready to and look at these types of questions. Yes, you may face some of these questions in a job interview, but it's not getting to that specificity. So now let's compare this to, let me copy this over. So now let's check out with role design. And so what we're doing with the role design here is we're telling it very specifically, okay, there we go. So act as a hiring manager at a mid-sized marketing firm. Your role is to evaluate candidates critically, identify gaps, and ask follow-up questions. Interview me for this role and point out where my answers are weak or unclear. So let's do this as a realistic, slightly uncomfortable interview, the way a solid mid-sized marketing firm would actually run it. So then it's giving context for this. I'll be blunt but fair. And so now it's really getting into a back and forth. So the previous advice was just one full script out and went right in. And now this is zoning into, hey, what are the things that a marketing manager at this type of firm might do? And so this was very much of taking more generic, just open advice. Oh my God, I have an interview next week versus, hey, I'm applying to this type of job. I want you to act as the manager. That role design can really set it up to be much more poignant and to the point of what you're looking for, as opposed to very open, generic responses. There are so many cases you can do. Another example that you may do is, I want you to, let's actually just move over. You are a social media manager for an executive function coaching company, and I want you to develop a social media marketing plan to increase engagement. So you can really come with multiple different types of role designs depending on the tasks that you may be looking at. And so this is going to start going through. Same thing with what we've always said. We don't want to necessarily take everything as 100% fact, but it is a way to help us zone in on this role design to set them up. This is a very different type of response. And the more specific you get in role design, the more specific and spot on the type of feedback is that you will get. Now you can even combine this with those global settings. Ask questions to clarify first would probably even make this more engaging and more to the point of what we're looking for supports around here. Okay. So when self-monitoring on this, you might want to revisit the role design, start a new chat if responses start feeling scattered. If advice starts conflicting with your goals, if AI is switching between agreeing and advising, or if you feel overwhelmed instead of clarified. And so the key takeaway here is if the output feels messy, the role probably is. And again, it all comes back to if it's not serving us and moving us forward, then we have to adjust it. And that's why metacognition and self monitoring is so important for beneficial AI usage, generative AI usage. Now, when looking at memory and persistence, this is really about what carries forward between chats and how patterns stick. So this layer is really about what does AI remember across conversations. Layer 4 is about within a conversation, but layer 3 is about, yes, there's global instructions across conversations, but what about this memory piece? And so what assumptions are quietly persisting here and how repeated framing shapes future responses? Without being aware that there is this memory aspect, it can lead to some narrative lock-in, reinforced bias, and old assumptions shaping new decisions. So memory isn't the same as context you provide within a chat, but both are influencing the behavior of responses. So why is this memory piece a hidden risk? So unlike prompts or roles and global instructions, memory is working very quietly in the background. It feels invisible. If you don't know where to look for it, it's very hard to access them. And it accumulates over time. AI memory can include repeated patterns in how you describe yourself, stated preferences or goals, common framing across conversations, reoccurring knowledge, and what you actually tell it and prompt it to remember. AI memory is not a full personal history, it's not a reliable truth detector, and it's not a substitute for reflection. So AI takes your words seriously even when they're outdated. So I have used AI a lot for brainstorming, and I use it with a lot of work context. How can I present information more readily? But some of the memory that, and I can show you some of this, is from a year ago when things have changed. But unless I know about that memory being stored, I may forget to update it. And when I ask new things now, it's still tapping into old memories. So this awareness piece, when you're not aware of that, it's repeating old assumptions or reinforcing earlier narratives. It can actually prevent growth by holding us back. So with awareness around this, it's easier to make cleaner resets. We are able to give it have more flexible responses because we're able to adjust the memory, and it can lead to better alignment with our current goals. Again, iterative process, iteration through this. So signals that your memory is shaping responses is AI may reference old framing you no longer agree with, a different state of mind. Advice can feel stuck. Absolute language keeps resurfacing, always and never. Or responses don't reflect recent growth or change. This persistence can both increase both usefulness but also risk. Again, another type of global instruction stuck throughout. It was global, but this is memory and persistence in action. So where can we find memories? So in the same place, you want to click on the bottom left side, go to settings. Again, you could just click on personalization. And then there is a section called memory. And when we want to look at this is actually just, and I'll pull it up, but you can ask it to not save memories. You can turn that feature off. You can also turn off referencing previous chats and previous chat history. Now, some prompts that we may have to also use us to access some of these memories is what existing memories do you have stored on this topic? What existing memories helped inform this answer? This is a way to actually have ChatGPT do the work for you of finding these memories. And I'll show you why sometimes this is more effective. But instructions that we will try is that we're going to update a memory that I'm pretty sure is outdated on my end. So let's pull this over. So just to show in action, we come here, come to personalization. This is where memory lives. And when you click on manage, you get, look at all of these memories. These are similar to global instructions, but it's remembering these that we've worked on before. So you can see all of these things. You can search through the memories. And so let's come into one. What are New Frontiers' model of executive function? What is? See what it comes up. Oh, this actually, give it to me based on your memory, not on the web. This is not true. This is wrong memory. It's making assumptions. This is not our model. Oh, wow. This is outdated. Can we please adjust this memory to focus on what is listed on this web page? Executive, executive, verify with me before you update the memory. Now I am able to adjust that previous memory to what our existing model is here. Yes, This is accurate. Thanks. Update it. So now that's updating the memory. And this literally, I'm pretty sure this came up when I was trying to test this out, getting ready for this webinar. I thought, when was the last time I worked with ChatGPT and understanding New Frontiers' model? And so now you'll sometimes see this in various chats, updated save memory. And so this is what it's so important, because you don't know this is happening. It auto updates the memory, and we do want to sometimes go through and reflect on, are they still accurate, or do they need some adjusting? um Part and these prompts are pretty helpful with some of that self-monitoring. When you get some funky responses, what are you basing this off of? Where are you pulling this from? So when to revisit this is, so signs that the memory may need some updating is if AI keeps returning to outdated narratives, you feel mischaracterized by responses, something just feels off. Like a big thing, like if growth isn't reflected in advice, or old goals still shape new decisions. This is another, like, just something feels like, wait, where did you come to that outcome? Feels like there's a lot of assumptions in here. And let's clarify. Hey, did you base this response off of some memories? Please share them over so we can see if they're still accurate. So the key takeaway here is that, unlike our brains, AI often needs explicit instructions to update its memory. AI is not living with us. It doesn't have lived experiences. It doesn't have a full pulse on changes in our life and changes in our way of thinking. It doesn't have that feedback. It needs to be explicitly updated when memories need to change, because otherwise it's maintaining that previous information as fact. And that's why we do need to make sure that we're engaging and making these adjustments, especially again, when we see it's no longer serving us and benefiting us. Now, layer 4. So in chat learning. So the overview here is that this layer is influencing how shared context builds in real time, how new information updates the conversation, and how the scope, constraints, and assumptions evolve within the same chat. So remember, the others that we are talking about, when you're in a chat, if you update memories, yes, that will impact other chats. If you change global instructions, that's going to impact across multiple chats. But there is also certain in-chat learning that is only occurring within an existing chat that you have open. So the key distinction is that layer 3 of memory is about what AI brings into all conversations. The same thing with global instructions. It's what it's bringing into all conversations. But this in-chat learning, layer 4, is about how the conversation changes after it's already begun. And this is very similar to role setting that we were talking about before, because that's within the same chat. Oh, I have my 2 out of order. So, again, just to recap, this is how AI adapts within a single conversation, and using the same chats carries previous information forward within that chat. I'll share a very clear example. So, how does in-chat learning actually work? So within a single conversation, AI is adapting to information you add, clarifications you make, constraints you introduce, corrections you offer, decisions you revise, changes in scope or goal. It is incorporating all feedback you give to better predict the type of responses that you're looking for. So there are some common continuity mistakes. So there are times that you might start a new chat when continuity would actually really help. I should have used an existing chat. There are also times that you may stay in the same chat when the task has changed, when having all of these previous information is actually not beneficial. There are times that people might continually start new chats, but you keep repeating background information unnecessarily. That is becoming a time waster. There might be staying in the same chat where you're letting outdated assumptions linger, and also allowing scope to creep but blur the goal. I will also share that at a certain point, chats carry too much memory, not to be confused with the other memories. Actually, there's just too long of a chat. I will show an example in a second where it will actually crash and stop working if you do too much. And just like I mentioned earlier to the first question, that's when sometimes it's great to ask um, the chat to actually pre-package things to bring it into a new chat so that it frees up some of that space. Uh, So each message updates the shared working context of the conversation. So now, looking at this, when to stay in the same chat is when you're refining the same problem, iterating on thinking, deepening reflection, building on earlier clarifications, or maintaining consistent constraints. And when to start a new chat is maybe the task has changed, the role has changed, assumptions are no longer accurate, the conversation feels cluttered or stuck, or emotional framing is no longer useful. And so choosing whether to continue or reset is an executive function decision. It's a very, is this helping me move towards my goal? Self-monitoring, metacognition, and really that efficiency in moving forward. So just some in chat learning in action. So where to find new or old chats? New chats open automatically when you open up ChatGPT, but you can also always click new chat at the top left. Old chats are stored on the left, but you can also search old chats. So if you click search chats, a search prompt will come up that you can actually search things. I use ChatGPT. Oh, let me actually, I'm going to share over. I use ChatGPT a lot. I use it to cook. I use it for, I've used it for like, oh my God, I'm going back to this new series. Can you give me a summary of season one? So I use it for a lot of personal things. I use it for work. So um, when I was sending out the reminder email about registering for this webinar, and even when I was helping design this webinar, I wanted to go to my previous chat where I conceptualized the 3-part webinar series. When I was working on the summary slide for this, I wanted to actually go to my previous chat where I worked on the session one and asked it, hey, what's a great summary to lead into the second part of the AI series? When I go back, so you can see I did a lot of work here on going back and forth, working with ChatGPT and coming up with the way to work with the content. So when I was working on the second one, I wanted to make sure that I was going back to that so that I wasn't doubling up work. I didn't have to catch it all up to speed and summarize myself. I was able to really go through and pick up where I left off as opposed to starting a brand new chat. So that's where you can use the search chat feature, and then you can do a new chat. This chat is starting to get to the point of being too long. And so what I will probably do is come at the end and start to ask it for summaries so that I have all the information to move on to the third one when I work with it back and forth. But you can see I didn't just come in and this is just a lot of iteration in process. So I wasn't just telling it, hey, give me a presentation. I really was going back and forth iterating with it. And if I every time I was working on this, if I started a new chat, it'd be like starting from scratch. So self-monitoring with the in this layer 4 signals to stay in the same chat, context is still relevant, questions are improving, thinking feels more focused and momentum is building, but signals to start a new chat might include responses feel repetitive, the task has shifted, constraints no longer apply, the conversation feels cluttered. So the key takeaway is managing continuity is part of managing your thinking. So there's one lens and 4 layers: the global instructions, role clarity, memory awareness, and in-chat learning. No single layer fixes everything. Safety comes from structure. For those that are a little familiar with ChatGPT, you might be like, wait, what about GPTs, custom GPTs? We didn't talk about it. Well, custom GPTs are not really their own layer. They're a pre-packaging of other layers. So GPTs package setups for efficiency, and these are best for repetitive tasks and usages. So what is a GPT? It's a pre-configured starting point for new conversations. So it allows you to define a role, set consistent instructions, preserve specific approaches, and reuse the same thinking structure across multiple chats. GPTs are pre-packaged sets of instructions involving all four layers. So where to find GPTs? So you can find them on the side, and there's two types of GPTs. So if you come over, you can see all of my chats here. But if you come over and you go to Explore GPTs, there are all of these public ones. I've seen some very specific ones. We've worked with some people preparing for like medical board exams. Forget what the name of it was. It was like an MB something. I don't know. But like LSAT test. If I typed in LSAT here, you can get like an LSAT study GPT. Someone went through and customized a GPT particular to supporting it. And what this does is it can actually show you ratings on these public ones. What we're going to be doing a little bit next time is, and I just wanted to present it over, but you can create your own GPTs. So there are this chat function where it goes back and forth. It asks you questions in creating a GPT. And this creation piece is actually filling in these configurations here. And you can get pretty complex here. And we're not going to dive fully into this today. But what I will share with you is an example of one. So here's a team bio builder. As I explained to you before, I want to write a bio for a new executive function coach. And this is a way that I was able to tailor the types of bios, the format of them, so that whatever was sent to me to update onto our website, I'm able to paste it right in there. It might be 50 different coaches with 50 different ways of describing their background, who they are. And I'm able to paste it in there and then get one single type of bio that pulls all the necessary information, but spits it out in the same format. That's the power of GPTs. And this is where we're really going to be diving into things like setting up GPTs for executive functions. So the next session is going to be about building these EF support GPTs and some other applications that we can be using to really set up partners in this. We'll explore designing GPTs for executive function challenges. We'll apply them to things like planning, initiation, follow through, and problem solving, and build tools that support thinking, not replace it. So today was about understanding the structure, and next time we'll use that structure to build. I finished on time. This is 2 times in a row now. I'm typically going over, but I am ready for any questions anyone may have. As a reminder, session 3 is going to be on these applications, January 22nd. If you're viewing this after the fact, later on, maybe January 22nd, 2026 has already come and gone. So you should be able to find it on YouTube then, if you are interested in session 3. My contact info, my name is Casey Schmaliker, Vice President, New Frontiers, Executive Function Coaching. If you're interested in learning more about our supports, you can give us a call. You can go to our website and find a time to speak, Or if you really just want to ask me some follow-up questions or find a time to chat with me, my email is here. It's casey@nfl.net, and I would be happy to answer any questions, hop on a call, whatever I can do to help.